Well, hey there, everybody. I'm Dr. Mark Hatala, and I'm broadcasting to you today from the conference room that's by my office and across from my lab. And today we're going to talk about within subjects designs. And I want to start this discussion by talking about research done with lysergic acid diethylamide, which you may or may not be familiar with. It's actually, those are the initials for LSD. And Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, or however you want to think about it. Now, this was kind of a cutting edge drug I'm not advocating its use, but in the 1960s. So for example, there was a guy named Dr. Timothy Leary, and I used to have his picture on my office door, and he's addressing a large group of people, and he has flowers in his hair. And he thought that using LSD would be the next step in human evolution. So that's why this was kind of a popular thing. And he wasn't just some crackpot. He was the head of psychopharmacology at Harvard University, which is America's most expensive and therefore best university. But I'm not going to talk about his research. You can look it up if you like. He did research with people who were in prison and to show that a religious experience through LSD would lower recidivism rates. And his research showed that they did. But it wasn't illegal until the mid-60s. And so this is research by Gerard in 1963. And what he was interested in was let's test various levels of LSD on a well-practiced activity. In this case, bar pressing. And so he did this with rats. And so here's their bar pressing over here. And then he gives them different amounts of the LSD. And so he has a control condition, and this is something like milligrams per ounce of body weight, and that's our control. And then he's got 0.05 and 0.10, 0.20, and 0.40. And so, so you're not going to give them to them in this order. You're going to counterbalance it. You're going to mix it up because you want to avoid progressive error, which we'll talk about in another lecture. What he found, this is Gerard's research, is there was a slight increase in button pressing with a very low dosage, and then a massive drop-off in their button pressing ability. Or it wasn't button pressing, it was bar pressing. But a very small uptick because the animal feels stimulated and doesn't know why, and then a massive drop-off probably because they're experiencing synesthesia, which is cross-modal experience. If you've ever experienced that's common in children, but about 2% of people are able to experience it. It's cross-modal, and so it would be like that this board feels cold to you because it's white. Or it's kind of like Skittles, where they say taste the rainbow. So it's the same principle. But yeah, so we're going to counterbalance this, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, well, I want to talk about what the advantages are, because the advantages of within subjects designs are so great that if you can run a study within subjects, you do. And so we can say within subjects, within groups, because these are, as I write it twice, these are interchangeable kind of terms. But there's at least 4 advantages. The first advantage is in terms of recruitment. So if you watch the local news, we can do a study where we have people watch the news, or it could be like, just KTVO, your source for news in the heartland out of Kirksville and Ottumwa, pretty small media markets. But what we could do is we could have a reporter who reads off different types of news, okay? So the first independent variable could be gender. So male or female, I don't consider gender binary, but for purposes of this study. Second independent variable could be the type of news. And so it could be good news, it could be bad news, or it could be neutral news. And you can make up your own examples for good, bad, and neutral news. And then the third independent variable is we could manipulate the age of the newscaster. And so we could try this with a child or an adult. So this is a 2 by 3 by 2 factorial design. Here's the advantage of running this as a within subjects design. If you ran this as within subjects, within groups design, and you have, in every case, 10 participants per group, then if you run it as a within subjects, within groups design, you only need 10 subjects because every person is in every possible condition. And if we wanted to chart this out, actually, we can do that very quickly too. So yeah, we'll put gender up here, male, female. We'll have type of news over here. So good, bad, neutral, good, bad, neutral. And then here's a child reading it. And here's an adult. Okay. So if you run this within subjects, within groups, every person is in every possible condition. So they see the adults reading good news and bad news. They see children reading good news and bad news because it's the same people in all your treatment conditions. Okay. If you ran this as a between subjects, between groups design, then how many people would we need? Well, 2 times 3 is 6, times 2 is 12, times 10 is 120. Or you could think of it as 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and then do the math. You might say, I've seen a t-shirt that says that, English major, you do the math. So we need 12 times fewer people in our study. And it's always difficult to recruit people to be in research. And so if we can go with fewer people, then that's a strong positive. Okay, that's the first advantage, and that's a huge advantage, I may say. The second advantage only comes up in particular situations, and that is if you have any kind of training of subjects or participants. So let's say you have to teach them a mnemonic. It's much easier to train one group of people and then run them through every possible condition of your study than it is to train different groups of people for the different conditions they're in. It goes back to this recruitment issue. It's just easier to take a small group of people and then run them in everything. The third advantage, I'm going to put a star by because I think it's the most important one. The third advantage is that statistically, this is a within subjects design is essentially a perfect matched design, or matched sample if you want to think of it that way. Because the person you're comparing their data to is themselves, okay? Because each person's in every condition, we can compare themselves to themselves in each different treatment condition. There's no one more like you than you are, because wherever you go, there you are. So this is a huge advantage. And the reason why is because we randomly, in a between subjects design, we randomly assign people to conditions. And that's to ensure group equivalence. But we can't really be sure that the groups are equivalent to each other. We just kind of hope they are. But in a within subjects design, because you're comparing each person to themselves, we can be sure that you're the same in different kinds of situations. The fourth advantage is that within subjects designs allow us to study people over time, okay? So we get to see you in every condition. In a between subjects, between groups design, it's like a snapshot because we only get to see you in one treatment condition, okay? Or the person's behavior in that one treatment condition. In within subjects, within groups design, it's more like a movie, if you want to think of it. We'll keep this kind of analogy going here. Or maybe it's a simile, or maybe it's a metaphor, because I don't know the difference between those things. But we see the people in every condition, and so it gives us a better understanding of their behavior. So these are the advantages, and again, excuse me, they're enormous, because if we can run a study within subjects, we do. Mostly for the statistical advantages and the recruitment advantages. But that's not to say that within subjects designs don't have any problems. They have at least two that I want to mention. First is this idea that it's boring to be in one, okay? Because you're in every possible condition. So if we go back to our KTVO local news story that I erased, okay? Again, if you're in a within subjects, within groups design, you're in 12 different treatment conditions, okay? So we'll say 12 conditions. If you're in a between subjects, between groups design, you're in one condition, okay? So let's say it takes 5 minutes per treatment condition, because you watch somebody read the news and then you have to recall what they said. If you run this as a within subject, or I'll let you do the math in your head. If you're in this as a between subjects design, you're in the study for 5 minutes. If you're in this as a within subjects design, you're in there for 60 minutes or 1 hour. Which study would you rather be in? And you know, it's not that surprising what's going to happen. It's like, oh, there's a kid and they're going to read good news, and now there's an adult and they're going to read good news, and so it gets boring. I have to say boring because I can't spell fatigue because I don't know how to spell that. But people can just tune out, and it's an issue with what's called progressive error. This would be negative progressive error, but we'll talk about that in another lecture. The second problem is carryover effects. So if there is a carryover from one condition to another, like let's say the executive monkey study, if you watched those videos about the Brady and Weiss research, you can't put people in one of the rhesus monkeys in one condition and then put them in another condition. Similarly, we can't do a lobotomy on somebody and then a prefrontal leucotomy and then put it back or something like that. I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. That's the way I always keep that straight in my own head. So if we have carryover effects between our conditions, then we have to run it between subjects, between groups, okay? But if neither of these is a problem, well, this is always a problem, but we vastly prefer doing things as within subjects, within groups designs. That's what I want to say about this type of design, and I want to wish you a fantastic day wherever you are. And thanks for watching.